Hi, everybody. I would wish to thank my friends like Karen Green, Jackie Shepperson, Amy Sala, and my sweet cousin Ellen, and whoever responds to my Facebook posts. I began a post with them earlier today, and I'd like to continue that on the subject of good health, especially about dementia that you might not otherwise be aware of. And though the information that I have about dementia is widely available online, people rarely give this subject a thought until it's too late. Once a person is showing signs of dementia, it can't be stopped. It can't be stopped. If it's caught in the early stages, progression can be slowed down, but it can't be stopped. But this isn't a dry report all about facts and statistics. It's my own personal story. I was having some vision problems, something common as we age, which is cataracts. I've also had and still have macular degeneration for some time now. So I went to an eye doctor and went through all the tests, and of course I had cataracts, which is a fairly simple thing to fix. But he then told me that I had a hole in my retina. Well, that's kind of serious. It looked, in the photo that he showed me from all his testing, it looked like a tear slicing most of the way through the optic nerve. And if it tore all the way through completely, I'd be blind in my right eye. This would be a surgery that's more involved than just a cataract. He then referred me to an eye surgeon to talk about surgery to try to fix the tear in the retina. So I went to this doctor, but before I went to him, I knew from my dementia learning that there are many, many things that cause dementia. And I say cause, but that's not the medical term, because in the medical world, they deny any one thing has caused dementia, even though dementia is affecting millions just in the United States alone. Millions. And they deny any one thing that causes it, but yet they say dementia is caused by many things. Still, in the medical world, they don't refer to anything to cause dementia. Their terminology is risk. If something can lead to dementia, they say it increases the risk of getting dementia. They never use the word cause. In fact, it makes them a little upset when somebody say causes dementia. They hate that idea. Their term is increases the risk. Well, there are great many things that increase the risk of dementia. Some things more than others. So, one of the things that I learned about dementia is surgery is a great initiator, opening the door to having dementia. In fact, the medical world will readily tell you that people in their mid-60s that have anesthesia, which is usually what you have with surgery, people in their mid-60s and older that have anesthesia for their surgery run a 65% greater risk of getting dementia from the anesthesia. That's a pretty large amount, 65% greater risk. So I knew that, and I began to look up some more information on it. I wanted to find out exactly what the medical world is saying about that, because I was facing a surgery. And so I went to some important online medical sites, the National Institute of Health. I looked at the Doctor's Journal for the American Medical Association, which is called JAMA, which is the Journal of American Medical Association. It's their newspaper, so to speak. It's their journal. I also got information from what is called The Lancet, another publication just like JAMA, but it's the European version. I went online and I looked up another very commonly used site, which is called PubMed, PubMed, and looked up what they had to say about the matter. Then I went to the Mayo Clinic, which has produced a lot of papers on surgery and dementia and anesthesia. So if you do that, if you go there, you're going to find that everything they say is reported by doctors. And some doctors will say, in fact, many will say, that there's no harm caused by anesthesia. And there's also many other doctors that say anesthesia increases the risk of coming down with dementia, and it's a high risk. So you have two different things, but if you go to a doctor, typically all you're going to hear is the determination of the AMA, which says, no, you're safe. Anesthesia does not increase the risk of dementia. Doctors say otherwise. But the doctor you probably will go to will always uphold the AMA, because the AMA dictates stuff to the insurance companies, and the insurance companies to the AMA, and everybody shakes hands with each other and leaves people in the dark. They want money. That's what it's all about, is money. So I learned these things about anesthesia and read all the reports I could find on the ones from the doctors that are blowing the whistle, telling the truth, explaining the risks. And now it's true that just because something brings a person to a higher risk of getting something doesn't mean that they will. It just increases the risk that you will. And there's a difference. But dementia is such a heinous, horrible, terrible way to die, not just for the patient, but for those who care for a person with dementia. It is devastating. It is a nightmare. I know. I was a caregiver, and I've talked to a lot of other caregivers and was in caregiver groups online to try to understand what this dementia was all about, and that's when I began all my studies. But anyway, so bottom line, I went to this surgeon, and he run all the same tests and came up with the same conclusion. Yeah, I've got a hole in my retina, or as I say, it looks like a tear, but they call it a hole. And it was almost through the retina. If it gets any worse, I'll be blind in my right eye. So I asked this doctor, I said, what's involved in this surgery? And so he happily explained all the things that he had to do to repair it. And but he left out the anesthetic that would be used. So I asked him, I said, and how is this? How am I put to sleep? Am I given anesthesia? What's going on? And he said, well, yeah, we give you anesthesia. And I said, what about local anesthesia? Because if it's general anesthesia, that means they put your whole body to sleep, including your brain. And that's dangerous to the brain. Anything that slows the brain at all, and there's a great many medical products, even over the counter, that slow your brain from working, is how they work. It's dangerous to your brain. So he said, yeah, they give you full anesthetic. And I said, well, what about regional anesthetic? Because I know that it's possible that if they just go regional, it just means in the region of the eye, they can numb and immobilize just certain parts of the body and not the whole body. So the brain's not even involved. They just more or less paralyze the eye from moving, and they can conduct the surgery. So when this doctor told me that they would give me anesthesia, I asked about the regional anesthesia. And he said, no, I don't do that. He said, I did that one time. It took 10 years off my life because it was very nervous about it and shaky. And you can't be shaky or nervous or tense during this operation as a surgeon. You have to have confidence in what you're doing. You have to just have faith and know what you're doing and not be worried, not be scared, just do your job. But he was probably 70 himself. So he opted for full anesthesia. And I said, well, then I can't do it. I can't have that operation. You, what? What do you mean you can't have the operation? And that's when I told him about the effects of anesthesia, and it's greatly increasing the risk of coming down with dementia. And he didn't like me saying that at all. He wanted to go full anesthesia, and I said no. So he said, one of the first things he said was, where did you get your information? And I said, online. So he instantly thought, although he didn't say it, that I'm looking up all these quack reports online, and this is where I'm getting my information, which I didn't let on. It was an insult that I would just fall to any stupid thing that comes along online. But I just kept my calm, and I just presented my facts, and told him that, I have the printouts of the things that I've been reading. I didn't tell him that I've been reading JAMA and PubMed and the Lancet and all the world-recognized leaders in health. And he said, I said, I have this information. I'll show it to you if you like. And he said, good, go get it. I'd like to read it. So and he said, if you have information like some real source like PubMed or JAMA or the Lancet, all the ones that I'd already had, he said, if you had something like that, that'd be great, that'd be fine. And I said, well, okay, I'll get you that information. I'll bring it back to you. Good, he said. So I went home, got the information, had it already printed out, went back to the doctor's office, and I gave him the studies that I had. And I gave it to the receptionist, and I said, the doctor is waiting for this, which means this is important. Don't just stick it in a drawer somewhere. I said, the doctor is waiting for this. He wants to read it. So she said, okay, thank you, and I left. Oh, and she wanted to know when I wanted to be booked for that surgery. And I said, well, let's wait and see what the doctor has to say, So I came back home. And that very evening, I got a phone call on my cell phone from this eye surgeon, which surprised me. The eye surgeon calling us, the lowly person like me, what's he doing calling me? And So he wanted to talk about this report. And so I listened, and he called it, well, this is junk science. This is just junk science. There's no proof. There's no evidence. It's just junk science. That's all it is. And, you know, at first when I mentioned in the visit with his office, he denied it was possible, said he had never heard of it. And here he is in working with anesthesia and never heard of the statistics and the drawbacks and the potential side effects or anything about it being a 65% greater chance of getting dementia. He said, there's no proof. And anyway, so he read the articles, and he still kept his denial. And as time went on, he got angry about it, protesting fully, not happy. And he talked with me that evening for a full hour on the phone, trying to convince me that these reports were just junk science. There weren't enough studies. The studies weren't broad enough. There's not enough evidence. There's not this, there's not that. He said there's no real proof that this aids in getting dementia, that it increases the risk. There's no proof of that. You remember the tobacco industry back in the 70s and 80s? There used to be no warning on cigarettes. In fact, there was lawsuits filed quite publicly against the tobacco industry. And the tobacco industry said the same thing this doctor was saying. Prove it. There is no proof that cigarettes cause cancer. And they can cite all the people that have died, heavy smokers that died of lung cancer by the millions. And they said, prove it. They might have had cancer anyway. They might have developed cancer even without smoking. Prove it. Prove that that smoking was the fault. And so it went on for years. The cigarette company denied it in court, denied it in front of the Senate, denied it here, denied it there, denied it everywhere. The lawsuits kept coming. Because it's true. You cannot prove that somebody might have smoked 3 packs a day for 10 years, and you can't prove that they died of cancer because of smoking. The tobacco industry can say, well, they would have died of cancer anyway. You can't prove that they wouldn't have. Logic, right? So anyway, that's what by the way, the tobacco industry finally conceded, and they put a warning on their cigarette labels. It started out like cigarettes might cause cancer. Anyway, that was their concession, and then later they increased it. Now it's cigarettes cause cancer, But this doctor was taking that same course. You can't prove that anesthesia causes dementia. I said, no, I didn't say it causes dementia. I said it increases the risk. I'm using his own terminology, the terminology of the whole medical society. Increases the risk. So, and by the way, a person having anesthesia in their mid-60s or later, they don't just wake up from surgery and suddenly have dementia. That doesn't work that way. That's part of the denial process. But a person has a 65% greater chance of having dementia because of the surgery, but it doesn't show up right away. If it's going to show up, it could take up to a full year before a person starts showing even the initial signs of dementia. It doesn't affect the brain immediately, but that was the open door. And that's what these other doctors that say the 65% greater chance, that's what they're saying. It opens the door. That's a huge percentage. So, and there's a lot of things that feed into opening the door and increasing the risk. And I mentioned some of them to my friends already about the air we breathe, the food we eat, the things we do to our bodies, all kinds of things that can lead to dementia, that open the door, that increase the risk. Well, you take X amount of things, and this increases the risk, and that increases the risk, and this increases the risk by 65%, and this can increase the risk. You put them all together, you don't have a fighting chance, because, chances are you're going to come down with it. So, memory issues are said to be common among the elderly. In fact, they just call it an aging memory. A lot of doctors to this day call it, well, your memory, you're aging, and so you have aging memory problems. Other doctors will tell you that the brain should stay sharp until the day you die, even if you're 100. And many people do. Many people get in their 80s and 90s, and their brains are still sharp. They said a healthy brain will stay sharp. So that's something to be considered. Also something to be considered is that dementia has 7 stages of dementia. 7 stages. And in stage 1, it's not even detectable. It's not even detectable in stage 1. In stage 2, it's detectable because, well, you forget where you put your keys. You walk into a store and can't remember why you went. Just these everyday things that we accept as, well, you're getting older. You forget words mid-conversation. Well, you're just getting older. You're getting to be that age. And that's a good excuse. But what that really is stage 2 dementia. It's very mild. So, this video is about warning of one of the worst cripplers of dementia, and that's anesthesia. And if you're facing surgery, try to find a doctor that will do a saddle block, if it's in your bottom half of your body, to deaden you from your spine. That doesn't affect your brain. It's a different kind of anesthetic. It doesn't go to your brain and numb your brain, because you don't want anything that numbs or slows your brain down. You want your brain to have all the strength it can. So, anyway, be careful. I would rather choose to be blind in one eye than run the risk. And here's the thing, too, about dementia, and I'll confess right now that, I'm a realist. I don't want to whitewash things. I don't want to look them over them. I don't want to say, well, it's just this or it's just that. I want to face life head on and be honest and be real. I don't care how much I don't want to believe it. If it's true, it's true. And so, I'll have to tell my friends right now that, yeah, I have the beginning stages of dementia, and I know it. I don't know how far along I am. Probably stage 2, maybe a little more. I used to be an excellent speller. There wasn't a word I could not spell. And as some of you know, I write an awful lot, and I've been writing and writing and writing for years. My spelling was impeccable. And now there's times I forget how to spell different words. That's really a bad sign. That might even be stage 3, I don't know, but it's irritating to not be able to spell a word that I've spelled who knows how many times in the past. So here's the thing about dementia 2. That a person can be stage 2 for decades. It can be a very slow progressive dementia. It could be stage 2 for decades and then kind of drift into stage 3 and be that for decades. You might die of old age. In fact, a lot of people do. They don't die because of dementia. They die with dementia because they've had it for years and years, and now they're old and they're passing away of a natural death. But to die of dementia, to go all the way through stage 7, is the most horrific kind of life for everybody concerned. So, anyway, I'm wanting to warn people to do all they can to help their brains, to avoid things that are going to hurt their brains, to try to opt for a different anesthesia, maybe regional, or a saddle block, or anything but full-on anesthesia. And if the doctors deny it, they can deny it all they want to. The doctors are not in charge of your health. You are. You're responsible. They're going to support where the money comes from. They're going to support what the hospital dictates they come from. They're going to support the insurance companies and the AMA. They're going to toe the party line, in other words. But go online, look these things up. It'll probably mean just as much or more as what I'm telling you. So that's the whole of it. That you can get dementia if you're going to. And by the way, if you have, like my wife did, she had other complications, not just dementia, but she had other complications. She had blood cancer. She had blood cancer. What do they call that? I forget what the name of it was. There I go again. Multiple myeloma. It's a blood cancer. She also had another problem, fibromyalgia. I just brought that one down from my memory. Fibromyalgia, which is a pretty painful deal some of the time. So because of the fibromyalgia, she was on gabapentin. Gabapentin, one of the side effects, now gabapentin is for short-term use. One prescription and let it go. It's because it's dangerous. What's the side effect of gabapentin that she was on for years? Dementia. One of the side effects. She had that blood cancer, multiple myeloma. So we went to an oncologist. This is before the dementia thing popped up that we really knew about. But she already had dementia. It was just in stage 2 or stage 3, but she still had dementia. So the doctor was going to put her on chemo. And before he did that, he had to give her a dementia test because they know what's going to happen if they give a person with dementia chemotherapy. It's going to be really bad. So they're required to give this test, and it's a really stupid test. Doctors that specialize in dementia will tell you that this 3-word test they give you is a joke. They will tell you that anybody with dementia stage 2 or stage 3, and sometimes even stage 4, can pass this test. And the test is you go to the doctor and he's going to say, I'm going to give you 3 words that don't fit together. And then I'm going to continue my checking your statistics. I'm going to give you 3 words, and in a few minutes I'm going to ask you what those words were. And you're going to say, okay. So the doctor gives you 3 words. 5-10 minutes later he says, what were those 3 words? And if you tell him, you pass the test. It's a stupid test. As people that know better, doctors that know better, say that's a stupid test. Anybody, even with the first few stages, can pass that test. Nevertheless, that's what the oncologist did. Why was he so lax? Well, because oncology was his business. His money is prescribing chemo. Keep bringing him back fairly often for their chemo, and the doctor racks up thousands and thousands of dollars. So what happens with dementia and chemo? The brain, like everything else in the body, is made stronger through your immune system. Your immune system, your God-given immune system, works in many ways in every area of your body. It protects your body. The health of your immune system also protects your brain. It stays off all the enemies of your brain. It's like fighting warriors that just war against this invading force, and they usually win. This is a God-given design, our immune system. Chemo kills that immune system. It takes over. The idea of chemo is to bring your body very, very close to death. And the only way to do that is to kill your immune system. Brings your body close to death. This is their logic. And as your cells die, so will the cancer. And once we find the cancer is dead, we will bring back your immune system and you'll be hunky-dory, okay, good to go without the cancer. And for some people it works. But not if you have dementia, and here's why. Because your brain works off your immune system. When he prescribed chemo for somebody with dementia, that opened the floodgates. That just opened the floodgates for dementia to take the brain over like an invading army with no resistance. Just boom! Just boom! Just take over like a flood. And instead of having dementia for decades or years, she went from whatever stage she was at to dying of dementia in just a few months. Less than a year, less than half a year, and she was gone. And it was fast, it was chaotic, it was horrible, it was a living nightmare, 24 hours a day while she went through this process. So, be careful. Be careful. And by the way, I'm showing signs of dementia. And I know that. I know me. And this doctor wanted to do this surgery without even giving me that test. Even as simple as that stupid test was, which I can pass in a heartbeat. He didn't even do that much. His mind was fixed on the surgery. Do the surgery right now. No other way of doing it. This is the way it's got to be. So, needless to say, I did not go back to that doctor. But I want to see what another doctor might say. So I made an appointment with another doctor, which I'm going to see Monday, this coming Monday. It'll be interesting seeing what he says. I'll find out more about it then. But anyway, to my good friends, to the friends that keep me going, because I'll be honest with you again that I post a lot of things of warning people about anything and everything, usually about false doctrines, which I won't bring up right now, but I'll warn people about that. And usually the result is you lose friends. You feel disconnected from a lot of family members because of it, because they believe in a lot of these false doctrines that aren't true. And I'm not going to lie to people. But anyway, I want to thank you, the ones who still respond to my post and make me feel like everything's not pointless. Thank you for that. And thank you for watching this video. Love y'all. Bye-bye.